All right, this is one of those floor speeches that sounds like a righteous mic drop, and then, if you're paying attention, you realize it's actually two different arguments stitched together like a ransom note. Thomas Massie gets up on the House floor and says, Congress created DOJ, Congress funds DOJ, Congress oversees DOJ, so where's the justice? Then he pivots hard into Epstein, millions of pages, redactions, resignations overseas, and he says he hasn't seen arrests here, so he starts naming wealthy, powerful people he thinks should be investigated. And then, without taking a breath, he switches to something totally different. Bayer, Roundup, lobbying, immunity, and the Constitution's promise of a day in court. Which raises the real question, is this accountability? Or is this a political two-for-one combo meal designed to hit your emotions first and your brain second? Because name them right here sounds brave, but it also raises standards. If you're going to call people out on the floor, you'd better be talking about process, evidence, and what the law actually allows, not vibes. Let's watch what happened, and then I'll break down what's really going on here.
The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Congress created the Department of Justice. Congress funds the Department of Justice. And Congress is responsible for the oversight of the Department of Justice. When will we see justice? I'll tell you what I've not seen. I've not seen any arrests from the revelations in the Epstein files, over 3 million documents describing horrible things, describing unspeakable things, so much of it redacted. Over 24 people have resigned, CEOs, members of government worldwide. But I haven't seen any arrests or investigations here in the United States from this Department of Justice. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, who has since been stripped of his royal titles due to his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, has been arrested. Peter Mandelson, who previously served as UK's ambassador to the United States, resigned in disgrace from United Kingdom's House of Lords and the Labour Party, and he's been arrested. Former Prime Minister of Norway, Torbjørn Jagland, has been charged. But we don't see any charges, arrests, or investigations in the United States. What do we see? We see our FBI director celebrating in the locker room at the Olympics overseas. It's fine to be proud of this country, but we should be proud of this country because we have a system of justice that works. And yet we do not. Who are the men that should be investigated? I'll name them right here. Leon Black. You don't even have to see past the redactions to see that this man needs to be investigated. Jess Staley, accused of terrible things. It's right there in the files. Why is he not being investigated? And Leslie Wexner. Why did the FBI list him as a co-conspirator in their own documents in a child sex trafficking case, and then tell him, according to him, that they had no questions for him? Why is that? Well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act requires the DOJ and the FBI to disclose to us their internal memos and emails about how they made those decisions, whether to prosecute or not prosecute. Yet they have not delivered those memos. And we still don't have the memos and documents and emails from 2008 to explain why Jeffrey Epstein was given such a light sentence in what would have been an open and shut case of child sex trafficking, which allowed him to go back and recommit these terrible crimes, create hundreds of more victims, and ensnare so many other people in his conspiracy. Where are those documents that describe those decisions? We need justice. We want the Department of Justice to get to work, and that's what they need to do now. Madam Speaker, I rise today to let the American people know that this government is under siege. All 3 branches of this government is under siege by lobbyists and lawyers from a German company named Bayer. They spent over $9 million lobbying the executive branch and the legislative branch so that they don't have to be liable for any damages that their herbicide causes, otherwise known as Roundup. And they're having some success. Now, they haven't had any success yet in this chamber to get that immunity. They've had some success in the state legislatures, which are also under siege, to get this immunity from liability. Look, the Constitution guarantees people a trial if they've been harmed. Why are we contemplating going against the Constitution? The Attorney General has opined favorably for this German company in front of the Supreme Court about getting rid of any liability that they should have for any damages. And the most recent thing that we've seen, the executive branch. By the way, the president's chief of staff and the president's attorney general work for one of the biggest lobbying firms that's received hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars from Bayer. And maybe that's why we've seen an executive order that says that the production of this chemical from this German company is a national defense priority. And we know why they're doing that. It's to keep them from having any liability. Everybody in this country deserves their day in court. This is wrong. We shouldn't succumb to the lobbyists, not in the executive branch, not in the judicial branch, and certainly not here in Congress and not in the state legislatures. But there's a lot of money at play. And I implore my colleagues to resist it and do not give them immunity. And I yield back.
If that felt ridiculous, that's intentional, because it's designed to trigger two instincts at once: disgust and distrust. Disgust at Epstein-related crimes, because that's a moral black hole that makes people rightly furious. And distrust in institutions, because if DOJ isn't doing arrests, then the system must be rigged. That combo is powerful. It bypasses nuance. It also creates a trap. The moment you ask for specifics, what charges, what jurisdiction, what evidence, what investigative posture, you get painted as defending the bad guys, which is emotionally easy and intellectually lazy. Massie is doing something that looks like oversight because he's invoking Congress's authority over DOJ. But he's also doing something that looks like performance oversight. Here are the villains. Here are the scandals. Where are the handcuffs? It's a format that plays well on social media because it's simple. And the danger of simple is that it can be true, false, or half true, and it still gets the same dopamine response. Here's what wasn't in that clip. First, the House floor is not a courtroom. Naming people in a speech is not the same thing as presenting admissible evidence. A member of Congress can make accusations or demands. That doesn't mean DOJ can or should move at the speed of viral outrage. Second, Epstein-related accountability is spread across multiple systems. Criminal prosecution, federal or state, civil lawsuits, sealed filings, protective orders, and redactions, and evidence that may be controlled by courts, not DOJ messaging teams. So when Massie says 3 million pages, redacted, resignations, and then no arrests, he's collapsing a messy legal ecosystem into one scorecard. Arrests equals justice. That's emotionally satisfying, but legally incomplete. Third, he cites foreign figures being arrested or charged, then contrasts that with the US. That comparison sounds damning, but legal systems, standards, and even what arrested means vary widely. Without names, dates, and case posture, it's not a clean apples-to-apples claim. It's a rhetorical contrast. Fourth, the second half, Bayer, Roundup lobbying, and immunity, is a separate lane entirely. That's about civil liability, preemption, lobbying pressure, and legislative attempts to narrow lawsuits. It's not Epstein. It's not DOJ prosecutions. It's civil justice and corporate influence. So why stitch them together? Because they share one emotional theme: the powerful escaping consequences. Epstein represents elite impunity. Bayer lobbying represents corporate impunity. Put them in one speech and you get a single narrative. The system is under siege. Let's get concrete about the law and the mechanics he's referencing. Massie is correct on the basic architecture. DOJ is a federal executive department created by statute, funded by Congress, and subject to oversight. Congress can hold hearings, issue subpoenas, demand documents, and legislate changes to DOJ authority or reporting. But Congress does not direct prosecutions. It can't legally order DOJ to arrest someone because a speech demanded it. DOJ is in the executive branch, and prosecutorial decisions involve evidence, legal standards, and policy constraints. DOJ prosecutes federal crimes through U.S. attorneys and divisions, criminal division, civil division, etc. The FBI investigates, but investigations can be active, sealed, or constrained by court orders. Massie references an Epstein Files Transparency Act, requiring DOJ/FBI to disclose internal memos/emails about decisions, whether to prosecute or not prosecute, and he claims they haven't delivered them. Two key procedural points. If Congress passes a reporting disclosure requirement, agencies can still push back based on privileges, law enforcement sensitive information, ongoing investigations, deliberative process privilege, grand jury secrecy, classified info. Even when agencies must comply, production can be delayed, partial, or heavily redacted, often because of court rules and privacy protections. When he talks about immunity and everyone deserves their day in court, that's the civil justice lane. Congress can pass laws that limit liability, create defenses, or preempt state claims. Lobbying can influence those moves. But that's not DOJ arrest people territory. So procedurally, Massie is mixing three different toolboxes: oversight, criminal justice, and civil liability. That doesn't make him wrong. It makes the speech strategically broad and easier to weaponize. This isn't about where is the justice. It's about owning the outrage lane and controlling the storyline. Here's what the strategy looks like. Congress funds DOJ and oversees DOJ is a solid opener. It signals seriousness. It gives legitimacy. It's the broccoli on the plate. He pivots into Epstein. That topic carries instant moral authority because it's indefensible. It creates a righteous fury that makes viewers feel like they're on the side of justice automatically. Then comes, I'll name them right here. That's the move that turns the speech from oversight into public accusation theater. He's not presenting evidence, he's presenting targets. And he's framing lack of visible arrests as proof of institutional corruption. But no visible arrests doesn't automatically mean no investigation. And it definitely doesn't automatically mean no accountability. It might not. The point is, he's skipping the boring step where you show how the law connects to the facts. Then he jumps to Bayer lobbying. Why? Because it reinforces the same emotional conclusion. Power wins, people lose. It's narrative glue. And that's why this kind of speech is so viral. It turns complex legal systems into a single, simplified battle. Good people versus rigged system. Sometimes that framing is accurate. Sometimes it's a shortcut used to avoid scrutiny. The speech doesn't prove which one it is. It tries to make you feel like you already know. Zoom out, because this is where the stakes actually live. When members of Congress use the floor as a naming and shaming stage, it changes public expectations about justice. People start thinking justice is immediate, visible, and measured by arrests on the timeline of social media. But real justice, especially in high-profile cases, often moves like bureaucracy, not like a Netflix finale. Evidence gets reviewed, jurisdiction fights happen, witnesses lawyer up, courts seal things. Prosecutors weigh whether charges can actually survive, because a flashy indictment that collapses later is not accountability, it's content. Now here's the institutional risk. If politics trains the public to expect instant handcuffs, then any delay becomes proof of corruption. And that creates a permanent crisis of legitimacy. No matter what DOJ does, half the country thinks it's a cover-up, the other half thinks it's a witch hunt. That's how institutions get hollowed out, not always by one scandal, but by a constant drip of you can't trust anything. And on the civil side, the Bayer portion matters too. If lawmakers start granting liability shields under lobbying pressure, the public loses faith in the promise of equal justice in court. That's not abstract. That determines whether harmed people can sue, settle, or ever get discovery. So this isn't just Massie said a thing. It's a blueprint for a broader political style. Convert complex legal reality into a moral spectacle, and dare anyone to ask for details without being accused of defending evil. This speech is like a guy walking into a restaurant, slamming his fist on the table, and yelling, "The kitchen is corrupt," because his food isn't here yet. Then he starts naming random people in the dining room as suspects, and finishes by demanding Congress pass a law to protect the restaurant's supplier from getting sued for food poisoning. It's dramatic. It's satisfying. It's also mixing categories. Sometimes your food isn't there because the kitchen is corrupt. Sometimes it's because the stove is slow, the ticket got lost, or the health inspector shut down half the line. If you want the truth, you don't just scream, "Arrest somebody." You ask, who's responsible? What's the evidence? What's the legal standard? What's the chain of decision-making? Outrage can be justified, but outrage without process is how you end up rewarding the loudest person, not the most accurate one. This isn't oversight, it's outrage laundering. Because real oversight doesn't just demand arrests, it demands documentation, timelines, decision memos, legal constraints, and a public record that can survive scrutiny. If Massie wants accountability, the strongest move isn't, "I'll name them right here." It's, "Here are the specific documents we demanded, here's the statutory deadline, here's what DOJ produced, here's what they withheld, and here's the enforcement step we take next." That's how you turn anger into outcomes. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like so more people see the context, not just the clip. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them and I want to hear what you think. Share this with someone who needs the full picture, and click the bell so you don't miss the next one, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.